Howdy, my name is William.
And I'm Mason.
And we are on topic.
Podcast where we talk about interesting things with interesting people.
Today we will
Today
Today we will be discussing change and time.
Yes. Shall we start with our normal thing we do on every one of these podcasts?
Define our terms.
And define our terms.
Yeah, let's do it. So what is change?
This was difficult to define on my end, so I'm curious what you will have said. But
You know what I say.
I don't, actually. I mean, you mentioned it last time, but I don't remember exactly what your...
Bad listener.
Because if you're going to say what I think you're going to say, I'm going to ask you to define that.
It's not that then.
Okay.
Go on though. What is yours?
So I think it would just be, I don't know if that can necessarily give like the most concrete definition of it, but I would say if there's any change in any characteristic of an object or a thing at all, I would consider that change. So
What?
change
You can't
itself,
use change in the definition. That's not how this works.
well, I mean, I
You
can
said
use another
change is
synonym.
when a thing changes.
Oh, fair enough. So if you have a point of comparison, like times 0, I suppose,
Mhm.
and
We
you have
cannot use
time
T1.
T0, T1, T0. You start with T0 if
That
you're
feels
going,
wrong.
no. That's normal. They call it T naught.
I don't like it, but go on.
T0 and T1. If you take a freeze frame of T0 and write down all the characteristics of it at T0 and
what?
T1, those differences, if you can observe a difference in the attributes or characteristics of an object or thing and notice that those things are not the same between your conception of something and how it is now, if you've noticed those two things, it has changed, is how I would define it.
So what constitutes a thing?
I mean, I don't even know if I need to say that it needs to be defined further. I think just saying it is an object, an idea, it can be pretty much anything.
Sure, but because I'm an essentialist, right? I believe in essences that undergird things. I believe in forms, but I don't think that you do. And so if you don't, then the most reasonable next thing that you would do to qualify an object as an object, a thing, to identify a thing in a like with continuity over time, would be then its collection of attributes. But if change is the changing of those attributes, then what? How many of the attributes does it need to still be considered the same thing? Which attributes?
We really got to Ship of Theseus very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I agree with the forms on a practical level. I don't think they actually exist, but I agree with the fact that I think our brains process, objects and things in regards to forms because it's just beneficial for us to look at it that way. Do I think that's how the universe operates? Absolutely not.
Right.
But I do think that it's practical to look at it that way. So, when I'm defining change, I suppose there is a little bit of a difference between saying objective change and observed change.
Right. Does it actually exist, or is it just a perceptual or conceptual thing?
I would almost argue that it is something that you... Yeah, it is. It's an abstraction of observations. I would say then. I don't think I could say it is objective. Well, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I would be able to say that it is.
Did you just make a note with your notebook?
Objective. No, that was my phone.
Oh. I thought you plucked the string.
No, that. The timing is crazy. I don't know if we'll keep that in, but my phone was buzzing for context, and I timed it perfectly to this little band on my notebook. It was fantastic. Because I don't know, from a structured standpoint, right? I don't think you would need any type of human cognition to be involved in just saying, okay, time 0, right? You could say physical characters, like say you have a particle floating through space.
Mm.
You have a physical characteristic of its position, for example, right? Its relative position. So you could have this particle is at this position in space at time 0. It is now at this position in time space at time in space at time 1. Right. I would argue that one of its characteristics has changed, that being its position. But, you could pretty easily conceive that that particle itself could, its energy, its shape, its whatever, could very well be the almost the exact same in every way. At least practically the exact same. So I don't think you would need... I'm not sure whether or not I want to completely say at this point that it is entirely a human conception.
Well, so if you have two particles then that are identical in every respect except for position, are they the same particle?
Other than position? That's
Right.
the only thing that... Yeah, no, they're not the same.
So then what makes you think that particle A what makes you think that this particle that you're talking about is the same when it's at point A and point B? If you're defining it in terms of attributes that are the same,
Right.
You're saying like every other attribute about it is the same. It's just at a different position. Why does that make it the same thing?
That's almost an assumption going into this whole, not even thought experiment, just this whole scenario, was that it is this, like, I am pulling the strings here. I'm saying that is the case. But I don't think, even like if I'm speaking how objectively the universe probably operates, I don't think you could say that that the two are the same. Because if you're looking at the freeze frames of each of the particles without the context of being able to actually observe it, I wouldn't be able to say with full confidence that they are the same particle, unless I orchestrated it or I directly observed it.
So let's suppose you orchestrated and directly observed it. In scenario A, you have two particles that are identical in every respect except for position.
Right.
In scenario B, you have one particle and it moves.
Yeah.
And so it's identical in every respect except position. What makes scenario A two particles and scenario B only one particle?
Well, you're saying that the two particles exist at the same...
Okay, so take that away. Suppose you have one particle. In scenario A, you have one particle. You remove it and put in another particle at a different position that's identical in every other way.
Right.
In scenario B, you have one particle. You remove it and put it back. And it's identical in every way except position because you've moved it slightly.
Well, it wouldn't be different in every position because time is an aspect of it. So I don't think this experiment is even possible. You could suppose that you've frozen time, but I don't think that
you don't need to freeze time.
What do you mean?
Why would you? All of its attributes are the same except for the place that it is.
Well, because so you're saying at time 0, you have the particle. Then you have to take the particle out and put in another one. There's a time in between there where there's no particles. And even if you say time 0 is this and time 1 is this, is that what you're saying? Like you're just taking two slices of time at time 0, time 1.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's different is then there would be no difference, but that's so restrictive that I don't think it's substantive at all.
That feels counter to intuition though. It seems to me that if you have two distinct particles that are identical in all of their traits, and you put one in and take it out and put the other in at a different position and take it out, that seems substantively different to me from having one particle in, taking it out, putting it back somewhere else.
No, I'm saying
they feel different.
So if you have a scenario where I put a particle in a box and then I take it out and put another one back in that's identical in all of its physical and whatever attribute, the only difference is that it's different, is that its position is different. And I take that scenario and I look at a time slice and I assume everything else has remained the exact same in this whole scenario.
Right.
And then I move to another box where a particle then travels to another area. If I take those two slices of time and assume nothing has changed, then yes, those two things are objectively the exact same. They're the exact same situation. Would I say it's the exact same particle? I think it'd be hard for me to deny that it is not the same particle. I think I would have to say that it is, yeah.
Huh.
Because
Wait, which
obviously
one?
this is
the single one or the two?
so the particle, the second one,
Scenario B.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I agree.
Yeah.
It
So I would
seems
say that
intuitively,
if you took time 0 and time 1, the particle before it's traveled along its path is the same in time 0 for both, and then it's the same in time 1 for both. Because there's no possible differentiation that you could make between the two. It would have to be the exact same.
So then what? But why isn't that true of scenario A?
In what way? What do you mean?
Because everything is exactly the same about the particles, but there are two of them. You put one in and take it out, and you put a different one in, and it's a different position. Everything is still like they are indistinguishable. Everything is exactly the same.
I'm going to assume that the particle in that scenario ceases to exist, and then you have a new particle that goes in.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't be possible for the outside slice of time. This is a slice of time in the universe. If we pause at this exact time and just observe all of its qualities and stuff, that other particle that you would have taken out has to exist somewhere in that universe unless it ceases to exist, which isn't possible. You would be left with some difference in energy in here and some other difference in mass or whatever. The particle still exists, whatever it may be. So if I take, it would have to, I would say scenario A is physically impossible to say that it's the exact same as the second one, unless you assume that particle disappears and then a new one is formed.
In my mind, we were just observing the box, but we can do what you're saying just as easily. Suppose the particle disappears and a new one is formed. That's exactly the same.
Yes, then I would say that it's
the same particle.
Yes.
Why?
Because there's no, like I said, if I took, and again, I'm assuming the two slices of time thing. In between there, obviously, no, it's not the same particle because there are going to be differences in how that all operates. There's going to be points at which there isn't a particle in the box. There's very clear differences that you can find in there. But if you're taking a time slice, then yes, it would be the exact same. There is no differentiating factor. The box and everything outside of the box is the exact same. The particle has the exact same qualities, same energy level, same everything in the first time slice. And the same is true for the second time slice. It would be the exact same scenario. I think the uniqueness of the particle wouldn't exist between the two scenarios. It would just be the exact same particle. It's difficult to imagine because you're assuming like almost two parallel universes, and in which case this happens, right? In one universe, this happens. In one universe, that happens. But yeah, there would be no. I don't think it's possible to conceive of a single differentiating factor between those two scenarios, and thus I would have to say that they would be the exact same particle.
Let's bring it a little bit closer then. Suppose instead that we create an identical replica of you. All of your memories, all of your thoughts, all of your physical attributes, it's exactly the same. It's indistinguishable. Is it you?
Yes. Is that assuming that I am also in that universe?
Well, suppose you're still here for now.
It would be in that split second where that's created, in that exact time slice where it'd be kind of difficult because I don't think it's possible for that to even happen because now I have different input. I have different sensory inputs into my system, right?
Right.
That would cause me to be a different person. So I think you could, if all of a sudden an exact copy of me came into existence right now, then I think in that exact time frame where that happens, then it would be the case. Any point after that, no.
Well, it's interesting to me that you say it makes you a different person. I mean, are you a different person now than you were 2 seconds ago?
Yes.
Funky.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, of course. I'm taking in new, I honestly think the human brain is scarily similar to how artificial intelligence operates. The more I looked into it, I was like, we are exactly that. We recognize patterns and act on them. It's scarily similar. The only thing that doesn't happen between AI is that randomness factor, which I have yet to characterize and really dig into, but I would love to write about it. But yeah, I think so. If you're me 2 seconds ago, I have different sensory inputs. I'm going to come to a slightly different conclusion. You can make generalizations and say, okay, if I asked you a question 2 seconds ago, or we'll split it up a little bit. So if you ask me a question now and then ask me a question in a minute, right? Say those are 2 separate timelines, in which case there's going to be stuff that happens in that difference in time that might slightly alter my opinion.
Sure.
But my answer will probably be roughly the same, right? But I'm not the same person. I'm just very close to the same person. And that's why you're going to be able to find, like, for example, that's why I've held certain opinions for months and months and years, right? Is because it's not like I'm completely different. I'm very similar, but it's, yeah.
Sure. I don't see what that has to do with your identity, though. I mean, like, so then by that logic, how can you reconcile, like, if someone commits a crime, like 3 years ago, how can you charge them with that crime now? How is it just to punish them now? Because it's a different person. It's not the same. Something must persist in the essence, in the deeper in the person that grounds them as that person.
That's fair. I don't think that that's necessary. Because, like, if someone commits a crime 3 years ago, it's very likely without serious rehabilitation efforts that they're going to be fundamentally a different person, right? Unless, like, 3 years is a little bit, but, like, say they committed a crime like 6 months ago, right? I assume your argument would still hold.
Yep.
I wouldn't have faith that they'd be enough of a different person to absolve them of their crime. Are you saying, how would you say that person is the same person?
Right. We can go even a step farther back than that, because you're saying they, right? We can make it simpler and suppose him.
Yeah. And I assume those for practical purposes. I don't think that they're fundamentally the same person. I like, obviously I recognize you now and I recognize you now, right?
Right.
Those are about a second apart, and I still recognize you as you, but because I'm human and I have to rely on my practical senses. But if you're asking me objective, like, questions as to whether or not you right now versus you right now are different people, I would have to say yes. I mean, there's
fascinating.
You have different characteristics. I can't say that. Again, like, as a person, I have to. It's very practical, and for my own benefit as well. In society, I have to assume forms and stuff like that, and it's not like it's a bad thing. It's highly practical, given that evolution and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I think that you have to rely on that for the purpose of law, I suppose, as opposed to, you can't make an argument to say, oh, this isn't the same person when it comes to that, because no one's going to care.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think law is purely practical. I think people think law is objective. I don't think it even is. Law is very practical. I think public opinion is significantly more important than objectivity in law. And again, I can be it's very possible that I could be wrong about that, but from what I've seen, I think that is true.
So you see no continuity,
right, like
whatsoever in terms of identification for anything. If you have a cactus and it loses a spine, it's now an entirely new cactus. There's a whole different
entirely
thing.
New cactus. It is a different cactus.
Right.
There are parts
in terms
of
identity, but in terms of identity, it is not that cactus.
It's not exactly.
It's a new cactus. No. So when the spine falls off, then one cactus has disappeared and a new cactus has appeared.
I think identity itself is in the practical realm. I don't think it's an objective thing. I don't think identity is objective. So if I'm assuming that, if I'm saying, like, you think these are the exact same in identity, I'm like, well, I don't think that they're exactly the same in identity objectively, but practically, I mean, I could recognize that there's no plants in here, but I could recognize that one of the trees outside, it may have just lost a leaf, and I can still recognize it as that tree, because I think identity is entirely personal. And I don't think you can. I think identity and what something is are different. that make sense?
No.
So I can come up with a theoretical list, which I think would be infinite, but we'll play game. We'll play ball here, right?
We'll play game.
We'll play game. We'll play ball with this idea at least, right? If I could look at that tree and write down every single characteristic so that no detail is missed about what that tree is, and assume I'm taking a time slice of that, right?
Mm.
And writing this down. That is what the tree is, right? But what I recognize that tree as, and what that tree, if it had a consciousness, would assume itself is different from what everything. It's not going to have everything on that list. It might even have stuff on that list. It might even have stuff included in its identity that isn't on the list.
So if you were to chop it up
Mm-hmm.
into little bitty pieces and burn those pieces into ash,
Mm-hmm.
and then collect the ash and mold it into some sort of object,
Right.
and the entirety of the thing
Mm-hmm.
molded into, I don't know if you can like create plywood out of ash or whatever, but
Right.
suppose that you can, and you mold it into a new object. Isn't
Right.
that tree?
No,
How do you figure?
because there are different. The list is completely changed.
Sure, but
The
it's the
time
same
slice list is
thing. It's
completely
just in a
changed.
different state.
It's not the same thing. I think because yeah, it's not. Well, it's kind of tough because with burning, you're absorbing oxygen from the atmosphere in order to feed that and create, like carbon deposits and whatever on the surface. So it's a little different. But I know what you're talking
Yes.
about. Like you're assuming, like, say I threw that whole tree in a wood chipper,
Right.
and then tried to smush that into a ball.
Yeah.
You would say that ball isn't. Would you still say that ball is the tree?
Yeah, I would say that it's a new form of the same substance.
Sure, but there are
I would say
characteristics that are different. If I shape the shape of this ball, or the volume, not the volume.
I would say that there was a tree and now it's a ball, but it's the same thing. It's just
Right,
changed
and practically,
shape.
I would agree with you. Objectively,
I think
don't
in an
it can.
ontological level, it's the same thing.
Then why aren't would you consider this building a collection of trees?
Yeah, I mean, those trees are all in the building.
Right, but it doesn't. So, but I suppose practically, it wouldn't make sense to call this house or this building a bunch of trees.
Well, no, because they've changed form, right? But the
Mhm.
substances remain. I think the essence of the thing is still
Right.
there.
But you didn't know the tree that went into the wood in the walls.
No.
Right? So your personal held identity for what that wood is like a 2x4 and not a tree.
But the 2x4 was a tree somewhere. I don't know which tree, but I know that it was.
But what if it was made of say that the wood was rare and it was made of palm tree, but you couldn't tell. And you'd be like, "Oh, that used to be a tree." No, it was a palm tree, which is technically grass.
Yeah.
And you'd be wrong in that.
I would
So
be wrong.
it has taken on a new identity now that it is a plank of wood.
I think identity has nothing to do with perception. I mean, even so far, like, I think that I'm still the same me now as I was, 10 years ago. There are
Mhm.
things that are different about me, but I'm still me. In order for things to be different about me, there has to be a me that persists underneath. And
Mhm.
so, and right, someone who saw me now may not recognize me if they knew me 10 years ago and haven't seen me since until now.
Mm-hmm.
But the identity hasn't changed. I am still me.
I feel like your identity has changed. I feel like your identity is an ever progressing image. I don't
That's
feel
your
like it's-
attributes. We're gonna. I've been avoiding making this move the whole time because we're gonna get back to our Cogito thing, but like,
yeah, we shouldn't. We probably shouldn't.
But there's a your underneath all of that, right? That
Right, and again, I assume that for practical purposes, and
But
I assume the form.
it
My
not-
brain functions off of the forms. I'm trying to go beyond my own brain, my own perception, and I get like you said, it's difficult because it's like that's all you know, and it really it's like a fruitless war to try and fight, but I do think that is
I mean, I'm also
something worthy of questioning. I don't think it's.
I'm also going beyond the perceptual. I don't think that you can extrapolate. Like, I think if you only take what you see, then you end up where you are. It's you have to, because there are two ways that you can ground identity, and one of them is continuity over time,
right?
Which I don't like as much. Like the thing, it started here and it's just continually changed over time into this other thing.
Yeah.
And whatever. I don't like that as a grounding of identity as much, because then you get things like dispersion and whatever that can throw it up, or integration, or
sure,
whatever.
I don't think that causes fundamental problems from my argument, but I can see why.
So if you're arguing
rough
identity from change over time, you've got one ball of copper.
I'm not arguing.
No, I know you are not.
Change. Yeah.
If one were arguing change from continuity over time, or identity from continuity over time, you've got a copper ball. You cut it in half and mold each half with a new lump of copper that's the same size as the original, and now you've made two copper balls that are roughly the same as the first copper ball.
Right.
But each one only contains half of the original. Then which copper ball is the original copper ball?
There is no.
What is the identity?
But
that thing has, like, in terms of continuity over time, if you're judging identity that way, and that's part of why I think this doesn't work, is because then the identity collapses with any separation or conjunction.
What's the problem with that?
Because the identity seems obviously to persist.
I don't think it does. That's my thing. I don't think it necessarily does persist. I think you can absolutely destroy the identity of something. It's the classic, like, tree falls in the, if a tree falls but no one sees it in the forest, did it actually fall? It's like, well, where was I going with that? Yes. Yeah. So that doesn't necessarily work, but we'll go with we'll go say, like, a forest fire happens and no one observes it.
Okay.
Fundamentally, that identity because I think that identity is personal, I cannot see the identity from before the forest fire if I am the first person to observe the aftermath of this event happening.
Right.
Right. And thus the identity of that tree has almost been completely lost. Say it's been years and the rain has and there's bits of the tree that have been dispersed in the soil and whatnot in the form of ash and carbonized bits. Fundamentally, that is I cannot fathom saying that tree's identity persists, because I think people's identities can be different between the two. So you can make an argument if there was an observer before and an observer after, and then they can have an argument about the identity of a tree if they wanted to. And that'd be an interesting conversation over here. But yeah, I don't think that. I think you have a problem with things fundamentally disappearing identity-wise, and I don't think that. I think that is kind of just a necessary.
I mean, here's
the thing: there is not going to be a person. There's not going to be a person to observe every single thing happening.
But I don't think there has to
other
be.
Than God in your context, I suppose.
I think they exist completely independent of observation. Here's the problem with your forest fire thing, is that, like, just because you can't identify the tree because you didn't see it before the fire, doesn't mean that the tree's identity is gone. And the easiest way that you can tell that is that the identity still bears a truth value, right? Because just because you don't know what was what tree and whatever in the mass that's on the ground now, like, you could point to a little chip of wood or whatever and say that was that tree, and it would either be true or false. There is an attached truth value, and that means that the identity must still exist.
Was that tree, though?
Right.
Yeah, I don't. So here's my issue, right? identity in your construct there, does identity have any purpose whatsoever? Can things have multiple identities?
No.
Okay, so if I have a tree and then I have a plank of wood, right?
Right.
Which are you picking between those? Is it a tree or is it a plank of wood?
It's a plank of wood that was a tree. The thing that it is underneath its form.
Right, but okay, so step before the tree is turned into a plank of wood. What is the identity of the tree?
It is that.
It's a tree, right?
The thing that it is underneath the tree. It is, and it is in the shape of a tree. But the it, that's what I'm getting at. In the same way that I think there's a you underneath your form or attributes. I think that you could take my consciousness and hypothetically tether it to a computer instead of to me, and that would be me, not this.
Gotcha. Okay, so, and you can, decide to deny this if you want, but if you assume like the Big Bang Theory,
okay,
going back to the beginnings of the universe, how do you reckon with, or how do you reason with identity in that state, or like a brief split second after the Big Bang when everything is just like some ridiculous temperature of particles flying around at 1,000,000 miles an hour? How do you reckon with identity in that regard? Like, because there aren't any forms that you can really find there. So,
yeah,
but would you say the tree, because that contained all the matter in the universe that existed, right? Or that has existed. And of course, matter can change over time, right? So I can make because then that tree exists somewhere in there, right? Say it's a split second after the Big Bang. You have this sphere of energy, right?
Right.
That is now formed. I don't know if it's a perfect sphere. I don't again, I'm not a physicist, or an astrophysicist. That makes it feel like I am a physicist. I'm not a physicist. I'm not an astrophysicist or a physicist. Okay, I'm
a physicist of no type.
I am a computer scientist, but also a part-time mathematician.
Just continue.
Anyway, you have the sphere
part-time.
You have the sphere of energy, correct?
Okay.
After the Big Bang, would you say that the tree's identity, what it is in there somewhere?
So here's a fascinating idea, and I'm not necessarily like holding this. I don't necessarily subscribe to it or whatever, and I'm not sure to what extent I'm willing to grant the Big Bang. Conceptually, it feels funky to me, but if we're going to grant it, then a way that you could then reason identity out of that is by grounding it in the end of the thing and not the beginning. We get this picture that all of creation is designed to a particular end, and also the second coming is right at the end of time. The entropy stops; things stop changing literal form in that sense, and so but they're created not perfectly. They're not created with all of the good attributes or qualities that they could have, right? Adam is not perfect in the garden yet. He's created with the potential to become perfect. Doesn't do that. But it sets us on this path that will ultimately lead to perfection eventually. Again, come the end times. And so if you're looking at things through that framework and granting the Big Bang, then it seems to me, because things are created with the potential and everything is created with a prescribed end, a prescribed intentional form, then the way that you ground identity is not with the beginning, but with the end again. So what the tree is, what we're regarding as that tree, is whatever that thing will be, whatever form it takes at the very end, at the end of time, at the second coming.
Okay.
Right, and so sort of the tree is somewhere in there, and that the things that constitute whatever that will be at the end time, the contingent parts of that form, of that thing, of it.
Right. Okay. There are a bunch of immediate questions that come to mind
Okay.
under that framework. Firstly, say a tree gets turned into a plank of wood, and then it gets turned into a pencil.
Mm.
The wood in the whatever, right? Just assume it's pretty continuous in terms of how it's changing. Pencil's not great because there's other stuff in it, but it gets turned into a drumstick, right? So it's been continually changed, correct? And I assume, do you know when the end of time is?
No.
Okay, so how do you then your identity must be practical, no? Because then because you don't know what that tree will be at the end, so how can you say you can make any conclusion about the identity of it? Or are you saying that its past is part of its identity?
I think that does. Well, no.
Because
its past is part of its identity.
Because I could be, say I was born yesterday.
It's not the first time we've gone here.
Say I was born yesterday, and
you were born yesterday,
and all I was able to observe. Say I was born like this yesterday.
Okay.
And all I was able to do was observe the drumstick, right? And then all of a sudden the end of time happens, right?
Right.
I was able to observe what the identity of that was under that conclusion, correct? Its end was meant to be a drumstick. But I'd have no context as to that tree. So, and if you exist, you do, hopefully.
Yes.
You exist in a time where you're able to observe that tree existed prior to the pencil or to the drumstick, right? And so your personal, conception of the tree's identity, it's a tree, right?
Right.
But my identity of it is it's a drumstick. And I have the correct identity under that, which means that your identity is possibly false, if that's what you consider it to be, unless you deny the importance of an identity altogether.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Fair enough. I think that's reasonable, and I think you're right. And so what that leads me to is simply to reject the Big Bang.
Fair enough.
Although I'm still not actually entirely sure the problem collapses or the problem goes away, even without that granted, because creation is still done over time and things still do change form, but it's a thing that has changed form. And so I'm not sure exactly what does ground that. My inclination is totally to ascribe a particular essence to any given thing.
Yep.
And I feel like essences can't change. It's forms that change, while the substance, the essence, persists.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I think this is true of people, and I think it's easier to argue, but maybe I have to let go of that regarding things as opposed to people. Maybe the essence, because before we were saying in our consciousness episode, the grounding was consciousness is the thing that experiences.
Right.
And you get this sort of, I think we basically ended up completely conflating identity and consciousness, which I think is sort of fair. That is kind of my inclination. That's how I look at it.
Okay, gotcha.
And so things without consciousness maybe also have no identity. That doesn't feel right, though. That cabinet is totally that cabinet and not another cabinet. And if you break it down, that cabinet has now been broken down and is now this thing. That is now this. It's still, I feel like there is some sort of continuous thing, but you're right that they come from something, an amalgamation of smaller things that then constitute this one bigger thing, which is then broken down into smaller things. But I feel like the bigger thing carries through into the smaller things, even though it was made of smaller things, which does, I'm not sure exactly how you...
Do you think that's a byproduct of the way people like to look at, like it's like how you find sentimentality in items, right? Like if I have an heirloom from my like for my family or whatever, right?
Right.
There might be hundreds of other of like roughly you'd say the same form, right? Say it's a watch. Okay, I'm going to talk about watches. Say you have an heirloom watch, right? Like you get passed down an old.
There's a pocket watch floating around in my family that I have been told that I may get to have, but I have not yet received it. I know, dude. Yeah. And pocket watches are so dope.
Mm-hmm. So imagine that's like, say there were a couple hundred of those pocket watches made.
Okay.
And it was left to you.
Right.
Obviously, this one pocket watch compared to all the rest of them are going to be significantly more important to you because it's this pocket watch. Although the form between all of those pocket watches should be under that the same. Correct? Right. So I feel like there's just a tendency with people to breathe that same life that they get from their own consciousness into things that may not be. Does that make sense? It's like how you can place a personality, like your creativity can lead you to placing some type of personality in like a stuffed animal that you had when you were a kid or something like that. Right. Like we like to breathe our own life into, like you said, things with no consciousness.
We do that. Mm-hmm. And fair enough. I feel like
that's probably where your idea. I mean, I could be wrong. Again, we're just spitballing here, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that might be why you have that instinct to say, okay, if that cabinet over there, I'm doing what you do now. If that cabinet over there was broken down into its parts, you would say that like what it is, it's still like. You have that, like that feeling, that instinct. It's like, well, I feel like that still has some of that cabinet in it,
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like that might be almost like a heritage thing.
We're sort of landing in a similar area here, though interpreting it differently, I think. But I agree with your imbuing perceived consciousness onto things that don't actually bear consciousness thing. That is a thing that we do. I don't think that that's where the sentimentality comes from, because I do think there's a real ontological distinction between two identical pocket watches, one of which has been passed down through your family and one of which has not. I think they are legitimately distinct items, and one of them has more value to you than another. Or even you could say one of them, because value is bringing personal stuff into it, but one of them is owed to you and one of them is not. One of them is yours.
Right. Yeah. Would you then say that a past is part of something's identity?
Right. And so that's where I'm going with this. Yeah. Maybe there is an extent to which I have to integrate in the continuity over time thing. Maybe part of a thing's identity is like over time, part of the continuity of identity of a thing does include the things that have happened to it, all of the facts about it.
Right.
And so, right, because like I look at time through something roughly akin to the growing block theory. Last time we talked, I said I just full on ascribed to growing block theory. To growing block theory. I don't anymore. Right. But very similar. So there are a couple different theories of time. There's A theory, which I believe is basically just presentism. A theory says the only thing that exists is right now, and the past and the future exist in no real way.
Okay.
B theory.
That real is doing a lot of work there. For me, at least,
the past and the future exist in no way whatsoever. So there is no truth maker regarding the past or the future. There is nothing. There are no facts about them because they don't exist. What exists is now. If you follow it to its logical conclusions in its purest form.
I'm surprisingly not detested by that idea.
I am not surprised by this. B theory of time is your standard like timeline type situation. So the past and the future exist in a real sense. This is eternalism is like, again, the logical conclusion, purest form of it. So all points in time exist fully and simultaneously. It's just being observed. So here you get a fourth dimension of time. You get your timeline, and then there's the extra dimension of perception. There's a spotlight moving along the timeline. And so that dictates what now is, and you can argue that that's objective or personal. But all of the things, all of the times exist all at once, fully.
That I also think is reasonable, which is strange.
That is strange. And
I don't. It's strange because I don't like, and I think that does function in the scientific world as well. Because, for example, in quantum mechanics and any quantum related theory and stuff, it's been observed that you can very well reverse time and things still function exactly how you'd expect. Things don't fall apart when you reverse time. So it's not like time doesn't operate in the same way as like a spatial dimension does, right? You can still go the opposite direction in a spatial dimension and nothing falls apart. And the same thing goes with time. So it is a very, very interesting, it's a very interesting idea actually, because it feeds into that. You said it was like a tape and there's a spotlight on a specific moment in the tape, but the time still exists.
Right.
It's not, I have thought about this before, and it's just kind of like a interesting idea. Instead of a tape, it's like it's almost like you have like multiple universes, right? Copies of them. I like to think of it as like a grid, right? And the easiest way to think of it is like a grid of Earths, for example. We'll just minimize it down to Earth.
Yeah.
And at a very specific time, you'll be in an Earth that is like a time slice, right? Where time isn't moving. So each Earth is its own time slice. And it is a very specific way at that time. And all it's doing is continually going through these things, through these alternate universes, all frozen in time, but you're jumping between them.
Right. So,
which makes me, and it's cool because then you can say, oh, wow, my consciousness is jumping between different dimensions. And then you can make an argument that that's actually not, it's kind of like a cool idea. I have no idea if it's even viable or not, but it is actually a good argument for, I guess, the specialty of human existence and also God itself, himself.
Both terms are valid. You say it if you're referring to the essence, and him if you're referring to the persons. Trying to suck in the fly?
I was seeing if doing that would actually affect it. It did not.
You realize that if it had worked, you would now have a fly in your mouth.
But then he wouldn't be annoying me.
I feel like it would be annoying you in a different
breathe
way.
Him in, I would just have it in my mouth.
That wouldn't be annoying to you?
Not particularly. It'd be less annoying to have a fly in my mouth that I can easily spit out than to have it flying around my head.
Interesting. I think I would be more annoyed by the fly in my mouth.
But that's a very easily fixable problem.
Sure, but a much worse one.
I don't think so. Did you hear that?
Anyway,
yeah. I have a question as to your the work of Christians, but I would like you to finish your whole thing about the blocks.
Okay, right. So there's another option. Hold on. Your thing with the grid of Earths.
Yeah.
So in modal logic, we talk about possible worlds. And most of the schools of thought when dealing with modal logic, some form of actual literal existence of the possible worlds. They have ontological value, because if they didn't, then they wouldn't be any sort of grounding. It would be useless to talk about them. But when you're talking about possible worlds, it's like in one possible world, I put my hand over to the right there.
Mm-hmm.
In another possible world, I put it over to the left there.
Mm-hmm.
The two exist mutually exclusively, but have to exist in some real way.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're looking at your grid of Earths over time, then I feel like that has to imply, because both systems are positing a bunch of worlds, a bunch of dimensions of the same rough thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yours suggests that each dimension is a different point in time. And I feel like if you posit that, then the possible worlds thing kind of goes away. But there's necessarily only one possible world, because it either is or is not true that I will do this. And that's fundamentally it. There is no other possible world.
I believe you could probably connect the two. I believe there's a way. So like I was looking at it like, say this is Earth T0, right? And then you have Earth T3 or T whatever. I think those would be infinitely small time slices, admittedly.
Yeah.
But we're already talking about an infinite plane, so it doesn't really matter. But I find it perfectly reasonable that you could say that at each time slice, you have multiple outcomes that could happen. And I think that would still account for free will. Do I agree with it? No. I don't think that's how it is. I do think that it is. I think the universe itself is perfectly deterministic. We will never be able to actually simulate it in that regard because it's infinitely complex. But I also do think that the universe is an infinitely complex yet deterministic system.
Yep.
is how I view it.
I actually agree with this.
Really?
Yes.
How do you account for free will?
So
you account for free will.
I don't. I charge.
But you're listening for free.
Well, I'm not accounting.
Oh.
I mean, I guess to give an account of something could reasonably be described as accounting. Is everyone an accountant?
I believe the accounts where accounting comes from are not as broad as you may imagine.
Well, no, sure. But I mean, to say that you give your account of something, right? You're just
yes.
describing
fair enough.
thing.
Yeah.
And so anyone who describes something then isn't. Anyone who describes
I was thinking a professional
more
like
than once.
accountant.
Right, but the term itself, accountant, I feel like you could totally put onto
But
anyone
an
who
accountant is called
regularly
an accountant
describes
because they
things.
tend to a bank account or like a physical account.
Right, so I'm not making
not
this
like a
as
personal account.
I'm not making this as a serious proposition.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
But in terms of language, I feel like you can aptly put the term accountant onto anyone who regularly describes
I am my own
things.
life's accountant.
Anyway.
Okay, so how do you adjust for free will, or how do you explain free will?
So, and I think we talked about this on a previous podcast episode. I'm not positive, but you've got your free will exists within the domain of volition. Your desire, your will. We totally talked about this in a past episode with the loved one, right? So you've got your appetitive desires, which is the source A of your decision making, and you've got the sensational stuff. The sensory stuff.
Sensational stuff.
And then you've got your reason, which
we're in heaven, by the way.
Wonderful.
We'll redo that. I apologize, but the krill thing, I'll quickly explain.
Wait.
It's krill. They're conscious krill.
It's krill.
They have
conscious
consciousness.
krill.
Conscious krill. And they're all in a swarm, and it's posed on 2 krill.
The fact that you're specifying that makes me think that regular krill aren't conscious, which I feel like is wrong.
Well, I'm abiding by your definition of conscious, because I think you'd say, I don't know if you agreed to a gradient of consciousness or a binary consciousness.
Gradient. Well, both. I think there's a a binary nested in the gradient, but
Anyway, yeah. So they act like they're humanly conscious krill.
Okay. Yes.
And they're part of the swarm. And all of a sudden, one of them turns around and goes the opposite direction as the whole swarm of krill are going.
Okay.
And he, and he decides like there has to be something beyond the swarm.
Okay.
And the other dude's convincing him, like, no, there's nothing beyond the swarm. Like, obviously, like all we've ever
swarm really correct. I feel like it'd be like school.
It's like either way, they call it a swarm in the thing, which is what I'm calling it a swarm.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it's like a school. It's like all you can see. You look anywhere, and there's just krill.
Yes, right.
And so he turns around and goes the opposite direction. And he decides, I'm done with being part of the swarm. And the other dude's trying to convince him, like, no, this is all we've ever known. What would lead you to believe there's anything outside of the swarm? We've always been a part of the swarm. All we know is the swarm.
Okay.
And he has to, and one of them's name is Will, which is why it came to mind, because they're like, he's like, I want to be free. And the other was like, there's no such thing as free, Will.
Oh, I see. There were levels to this joke that I did not understand.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, you know what they say about jokes that you have to explain?
They're not funny. Anyway, no, but like I was bringing it up because it reminded me of it. I'm like, you know what? That's actually kind of an interesting thing to think about, because then they actually exit the swarm. They go the opposite direction and they exit the swarm, and then they look back on it and they can see the swarm in its entirety, and they're like, wow, this is all we ever knew, and we're looking at it right now. And it was kind of deep, you know? And it's from an animated movie about a surfing penguin.
Fair enough.
It's actually kind of a cool allegory.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, in order for it to be an allegory, it has to be secretly communicating another thing while saying one thing.
That's what I'm saying. Well,
so
maybe. I don't know.
Is
I don't
it
know
allegorical?
the intents of the directors, but yeah, but it was just kind of cool. It was like a genuinely interesting, like, statement about life, I suppose.
Duly noted.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find it. I'll send it to you.
The movie or the scene?
No, the scene, not the movie. The movie Surf's Up. You can watch it if you want. You don't have to, though. Apparently, it's a good movie, but I haven't watched it in years.
Today we will be discussing Change Time and Surf's Up. But yeah, so anyway,
so
you've got the sensory. I just booped my nose on the mic.
Sensory.
You've got the sensory aspect to decision making, and then you've got the reasoned part, the logical part, the brain and the flesh,
right?
And they vie against each other, and your will is what chooses between them, in making your decision. Okay. And so the volition is where free will comes in, the ability to choose to do what you want to do. Right, and so I mean, this is how you reconcile free will with bondage and sin also. Right, because after the fall, we necessarily just are going to sin. We make the wrong choices. We just do, if left to our own devices. Excuse me.
You?
But that doesn't violate free will. We still say that we have free will because you're choosing what you want to do. It's just that what you want to do is going to be the bad thing every time because it calls louder to us than the good thing. And so the point at which divine intervention, the point at which divine ordination exists in our decision-making process is beneath the will. It exists within the perceptual, within the reasons, within the calling, within that inclination toward either sin or righteousness that you feel. And then you act on that according to your own will because of how inclined you have been toward it, because of how loudly it calls to you. And so whether or not we do good isn't up to us. That's outside of our capacity. but it is still, whatever action we're making is still an action of our own volition, of our own free will. It's just that our will is influenced strongly in a predictable manner. So at the same time, I can be acting freely and also be making a choice that was predetermined for me.
Did Jesus have free will?
Everyone has free will. We just established that.
Right, but you said it's like you're being influenced by that want to do good, correct? Or that you get like divine inspiration to be good or something like that?
So when you do good, it's the act of the Spirit. It's any good in you is the active working spirit of God, the Holy Spirit.
But you said it's out of his
acting through you.
It's out of your control when that happens, correct?
Right.
Which is why you're a determinist in that regard, right?
I mean, you can go even more simply than that, because God knows all things, past, present, and future, which means that there is necessarily, so any event, any truth claim I make about the future has a fixed value. It is either true or false that I was going to make a past truth claim. It is either true or false that why am I having such a hard time coming up with an example for this? It is either true or false that I will punch myself in the face.
Certainly.
And you can bind that by time, right? So it is either true or false that I will punch myself in the face within the next 5 seconds.
Yes.
Right, that punch at time t.
Yes.
Punch me at time t.
Gotcha.
I guess it would be me.
Me punch me time t.
Right. Anyway, so that's either true or false. We don't know which it is yet.
Right.
We don't have that truth value. But there is one, and it's fixed. It just is either true or false, objectively. And since there's a truth value to that is fixed definitively, and since God knows all things, is truth itself, is the bearer of all facts, then this means that God must know the outcome of that thing, of any given event. So any truth claim that you can make about anything in the future must, because it has either a positive or negative fixed value, must then be something that is known by God.
But you say you have an influence against that, correct? You have free will to affect the outcome of the proposition, right?
Well, no, because God intervenes. So all things are ordained by God is a fundamental Christian axiom. All that comes to pass is ordained by him. Nothing that happens was something that he didn't let or make happen. Depending on how you want to deal with the wording. There's finer theological nuance there.
Right.
But, right, and so you act of your own free will only in that you're doing what you want most to do. You're doing what you have decided to do at any given point, but it's still bound and fixed to what God has decided that you're going to do, because his decision-making, his ordination, lies a step beneath your decision-making. So whenever you do something, that is something that God has decided you will do. But you're still choosing it of your own volition. It's just that the influence underneath your decision-making irresistibly leads you to do it. Because we cannot choose to not sin, to not make the wrong decision without the Spirit. And when the Spirit decides to inhabit us, we can't turn away from it. It's irresistible. And so, but I mean, like in that situation, so in any given decision-making point, you're either making the right or the wrong decision. The good or the bad decision. And obviously we're simplifying, but it scales.
Right.
Then either you want to do the bad thing or you want to do the good thing. And then you do whichever one accordingly. And so what determines whether you do the good or the bad thing is whether or not the Holy Spirit comes and guides your will in that direction, comes and influences, points, and then you just necessarily end up choosing that.
Well, I mean, my question then, I mean, it feels like an obvious question. I feel like we're going a little off topic, but that's in the spirit of the podcast. So, but in that scenario, what would drive God to not influence people in the correct way?
There are various,
because I feel like, say you have a troubled person who's like an addict or something, right?
Mhm.
You could that person could benefit so much from hearing the word of God or whatever, right? Or like having divine inspiration or something, right?
Mhm.
And yet people, so you could make an argument, say maybe he is and they're not being receptive to it, but
no, you can't make that argument. God's
right,
grace is irresistible.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would drive him to not intervene and spread his and provide divine inspiration in that regard?
Well, so all that is done, all that God does, he does to his glory and good pleasure. So there are, and I don't, far be it for me to explain to you or to state in any factual manner, or even maybe to speculate on the mind and intent of God behind every given action that he takes. But there are certain instances like that, even that we get in scripture, right? He hardens Pharaoh's heart. For example, there's later on, I don't remember which people it is, but there's some people group in Isaiah, and Isaiah's speaking to God, and God's like, yeah, these people didn't listen to me and were not, I was going to say complacent, but that's not exactly right. But they're, sinking into their exorbitance and they're valuing all these worldly things over me. And so we're going to, there's an even better example. I believe Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm not positive, don't quote me on that. But he says that he will turn them over to their desires or turn them over to their sin. Right. And so it can be done. I mean, the way that I think about it, the best way that I think you can interpret it is that it's all pointed toward the ultimate good. These bad things that happen are done either to instill fear in God to point people toward him, or in order to display the depth of sorrow that there is without him, to make people turn toward him, or simply to amplify his light and glory, and so on, or even just necessary events that have to occur in order to lead to the broader, to the final victory, whatever.
Sure.
But the most I can do is speculate.
So, but I mean, so you mentioned that it was irresistible once you hear the word of God, or that you have divine inspiration or whatever, right? Once God has touched you, I suppose, in some facet, you can, it is irresistible, correct?
It's not a one and done thing. It's like you get that in some non-denominational and Baptist-y circles, where it's like, I've been saved, and and it's like, no, you're continually being saved. Any good that is in you is the Holy Spirit not having touched you and then now you're different. Any good that is in you is the Spirit actively working in you. So if it were to leave, then you would stop being good again. This doesn't happen. We have perseverance of the saints. So anyone who is elect, anyone who is predetermined to be saved will then be saved, and the Spirit will continue to work in them. But it's not like a one and done thing, is my asterisk to what you said.
The reason why I was going to ask is because you brought up the example with Isaiah, and they're like, oh yeah, they listened to the word of God and they didn't listen, right? That kind of confused me for a couple reasons. Because why would God reach out to these people that I assume you would say were not predetermined to experience the grace of God or whatever, right?
You're right. Definitively not elect.
Yes, definitively not elect. Then what is the purpose of it? It's like taunting someone to give them like, hey, this is the glory you could have had, or to try and give them these, to try and convince them of these things, and for them to reject it. It's like, okay, well then what was if predeterminism is correct, then what would be the purpose of God doing that? Do you think it's to the end of that story coming together in the Bible to then influence people later to say like, oh, if I do hear the word of God, I should listen? Do you think that's the end?
I think that's a very reasonable speculation toward it. Yeah, I think having those testimonies in Scripture for us to then read and see the way that things play out, I think also possibly the way that events elapse, that the way that events compound over time to lead to a certain result. Again, it could be done presently as a means of displaying the need for fear of the divine, as a means for displaying the emptiness without the divine. There are all sorts of reasonable guesses that you can make as to why he might do that in the interest of his chosen people. But far be it from me to speculate.
Okay. I'm going to circle way back because
yes,
it's still going to be related to Christian, because I want to see how this functions and what we were talking about with the forms. I'm going to try and remember what I was going to ask. I wanted to.
But so anyway, free will and determinism are not mutually exclusive. You can have free will in a determinist system.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, okay, that's fine. I'll
metaphysically speak, because all free will implies is that you're making your own decisions. You're choosing what you want, and so then if what you want is influenced in a determinist system, you can still have free will.
I'll grant
conceptually.
I'll grant it's possible. Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like in a metaphysical sense, free will conceptually and determinism conceptually are not mutually exclusive.
Right. I think. Well, yeah. I'm not gonna get it. Well, I'll say that it's for now until I can put some time down into thinking about it deeper, because I want to go back to our original topic, at least in some regards. I think this is still relevant. And I'm glad
we're totally in the bounds of change in time.
So I was going to ask, so I'm trying to help you work out this whole identity thing. So you mentioned that did you say that the past can be part of something's identity then? Because I was going to ask about how, like, if you have a point where what is the official name of the not the day of reckoning? What is it?
The second coming.
The second coming. We'll call it the second coming.
Day of reckoning is sort of legit, though. I mean,
that certainly would be a day of reckoning.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So on that day, you said that that's where. Are you still sticking with your opinion that that's when an identity for something is kind of like enshrined almost? Like that's when it's like put, like set in stone, this is what the identity of this object was?
No, I'm not. That was a fun attempt at dealing with the Big Bang thing, but it wasn't a serious proposition, and it's not one that I hold.
Because I was going to ask how you think work towards the divine being put and how it relates to items affects an item's identity, right? Because I think if you accept that a thing's past can influence its identity, right, you could probably make a biblical argument to say that I'm not even, like, I think, like, circling back, I think that the other one is kind of possible, but you'd have to say that the work, the divine, the work towards the divine that went into something like some object, right, that was related to it or directly, the center stage of something like that, goes into that, and it could be part of its past, and that's what gives it its identity. But I don't know how you feel about that. I don't know.
It would be sort of like a chipping away of the marble, and under that construct, which I actually kind of like. I don't know. I'll have to think about to what extent I may be able to adopt that.
Mm.
But I'm a fan of the marble chipping. Just generally speaking, I tend to like to think about things that way.
Mhm.
But no, so this is why I was starting to talk about the growing block theory. So you've got A theory, which is basically presentism, and you've got B theory, and oversimplified, of course.
Mhm.
And you've
Things that either a bee or
a bee?
no, outside there was a shadow that went
I
over
was going to say, that is not a bee.
it was either a bee or a bird.
There was a fly that flew next to me.
I saw that as well.
Yes, which is not a bee.
Anyway, bee.
Yes, the B theory of time, which is basically eternalism. Again, way oversimplified. But then there's another option, which is the one that I held until I accepted determinism, which is the growing block theory, which makes much more intuitive sense to me, and which I vastly prefer to A or B theory.
Mm-hmm.
So growing block theory is the idea that time is bound by time is the number of facts that there are.
Mm-hmm.
Time is bound by the amount of truth statements, basically. So every time that something happens, a new truth statement is created because it's either true or false that happened, and all the sub things of that, true or false that it happened then, that it happened in this way, etc.
You think there's more truth statements?
Every time something happens, a new set of truth statements is created.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
If assuming non-determinism.
Gotcha. I thought you meant that the number of truth statements that could be made grows. I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it does. Because if you're not assuming determinism, then there are no truth values. There are no truth statements about the future.
Well, no, I was going to say okay, so the past is relevant in that regard then.
Yes.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So in the terms we were talking about before, the growing block theory, super simply, is the past exists and the present exists, but the future does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the amount of time that has elapsed is equivalent to the amount of events that have elapsed, and the position in time is the same as the number of events. Then there's a conversion ratio, not a predictable one, but
right.
And I like that makes way more sense than either of the other two to me. And we talked about the implications for time travel with that in a past episode not too long ago. I think you can
okay, but doesn't that make time travel
going back in time specifically
impossible, correct?
Sort of. You could make something that looks an awful lot like time travel backwards, right? Again, suppose you have a button that changes this position of every molecule
right
now to be exactly as it was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So everything in the world is exactly how it was 20 years ago. But yes, you're right. Technically, it's not time travel because that then is a new thing that has happened. And so you're further along in time. It just looks exactly the same as the past. Everything is the same as it was, but you're further in time. Is the closest you can get to time travel, I think.
But if that is a new event, and you said as time continues, the truth statements grow, but you've traveled back in time, would your truth statements not have shrunk, or is it just another part of it? Because then time is irrelevant in that regard, no? Have you broken your thing?
I have indeed.
What were we speaking about?
The time travel. You were saying if it's the amount of facts that happened, and you were to try to go back, then there would be fewer truth statements again. And no, here's why. Right, if you go back in time, that is a new event that's happened, and that's added to the list of truth statements. Everything else looks exactly how it was, but the facts about how they were are still there. They still exist, right? Because if you have changed everything...
But you're not changing time then. Because...
Exactly. That's my argument.
But you're not going back in time. You're not
Correct.
supposing you go back in time. You're just supposing that all the molecules are
Right. The closest you can get to time travel, I think, is that you can still move the regular amount forward in time, but you can make everything else look exactly or be exactly as it was in the past. But the fact about how they were before you made them look how they were in the past still exists, so it's still technically the future.
I see what you're saying. I don't think it's particularly useful in any regard. Like, I don't think that, I don't know. I mean, fair enough. That wouldn't, if you did that, because it's purely physical, and
You're right.
you're not, again. Yeah.
Yep. So I posit no true time travel. Excuse me.
I thought that was the chair. That was you?
My throat.
Oh, interesting.
Unless you heard something else. I mean, maybe the chair did something too.
I think the chair probably did something too.
Okay.
It sounded like a thud. Anyway, so yeah. Just to provide some, I think we should probably give some context. So the mic stand broke.
Yes.
Yes, unfortunately, the mic stand is broken, so we have to, we'll have to hold that for the rest of this, but it's fine. We'll figure stuff out later.
Strength training.
Yeah. So do you see why? Like, I like the option B you presented. I think the most of the three. Yes.
Interesting.
At least from what I remember, I maybe am remembering it incorrectly, but I do. I mean, time being its own dimension is very, very, very appealing for me conceptually. I mean, that is kind of how most sciences operate now. I mean, there's arguments for there's like 8 dimensions or something like that, but I think people say entropy is its own. I don't know. Very, very strange. I don't remember exactly what it is, but yeah. So, and again, like I said, it is very peculiar that most famous scientific equations that relate to trying to explain the universe, like many of the equations relating to quantum physics and whatnot, if you reverse time, they function exactly how you'd expect.
What do you mean by that?
Like in that, I believe they did I don't remember. I want to say they did a statistical analysis where they took a certain outcome and used the properties of the outcome to plug it in, and then could determine, and it accurately predicted some initial value of that. So like they were able to take a current, like they said, like for example, it's like I'm going to run this at 12 volts or something like that. And then they made an observation outside without referencing the fact that they had used 12 volts, made observations of a thing at a separate time, right? And then reversed time, and then were able to accurately predict that it was 12 volts just off of that. So you can, in the same way that we can drop a ball and predict how many times it will bounce over an inch off the ground, right, using math, we can predict using the now what has happened in the past without context as to what happened in the past.
Right.
So yeah, it's very weird to think about, but it basically, time operates exactly how you'd expect if you're assuming that it is its own like dimension. Which is probably why I'm so amicable to that idea.
I feel like being able to extrapolate past events from present things is different from actually running time back, though. They seem entirely distinct to me. Like, just because the equations that you're using to extrapolate things in the future from the past also work to extrapolate things from the past in the future. If you run them in reverse, I don't feel like that has any bearing on the actual physical or like metaphysical phenomenon of time. itself.
How so?
I don't.
Because it feels, I mean, it feels as if you can use, if you're thinking of time as a dimension, you can take the now and you can make an accurate prediction for the future and the past. I find it very interesting that you can use sciences to predict outcomes, right? And say, like, okay, if I drop this ball on the ground, it will bounce this many times above 1 inch off the ground. Because you could make an argument. It's like when you're clapping, like you don't know how many times it's truly bouncing, right? But it seems perfectly reasonable. Like, it's weird that you can predict an event in the future accurately. Like you're knowing the truth before the truth happens.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like I could predict that it's going to bounce 4 times above 1 inch off the ground if I drop it from a certain height. And then I do the thing, and then it does exactly what I said it would. It's like I already knew what was going to happen. I already knew what truth was going to be revealed before the truth was itself revealed.
Yep.
And you could maybe say that me performing the calculations, you could either say that me performing the calculations is what instantiated the truth, or you could say that the truth already existed. And I think it's much easier to say the truth already existed, right? But if you slide time, it's like an instantaneous truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the truth does have to exist independently of the calculations or the event occurring presently. Like we were talking about earlier. I think there just is a fixed truth value for any truth claim you could make about the future right now. And I think that, so you're saying that the truth maker of those truth claims, the things that makes them true or false, is that the result of that event already exists ontologically right now. Also, all of time exists in a real sense.
Yes, I mean it depends on what you mean by exists, but I know what you're alluding to. Right. And yes, I would say yes. That is.
This is what. So, I agree with that. Minus I think it exists, but I think it exists differently. I don't think it exists in an ontological sense.
Okay.
And this is where I have sort of a hybrid of something between B theory, like you were talking about, and growing block. Because accepting that, like we were talking about before, that all events must be determined because God knows them all and doesn't change, so the outcome can't change because he knows it. And if it changed, then that would mean that he knew something else, which would mean that his knowledge would change, which isn't scriptural.
Right.
So all events that are going to happen have to be determined, and that means that the truth values, the fixed truth value for that does exist in a sense. It is either true or false, factually, objectively. But I do think there's still a notable distinction between things that have actually happened or are actually happening and things that will happen. There seems to me to be a clear and evident distinction between certain future events and instantiated, like certain future truths and instantiated or manifested present or past truths. I guess past truths don't exist because they're present. Truths about the present or past.
Right. Yeah. So what is that distinction then, would you say? And this actually is there's probably a crossover you can find with science, because I know my distinction that immediately came to mind was observance. But again, I don't know. That's very strange, and it gets I would need to do research into that in order to give you some grounding for that. But
right.
what would your distinction be between that?
Whether or not it has actually occurred in
Mhm.
the at the current point in time. There's like
or something that is bound to occur.
like I think you can make true statements about the future. I think you can totally make truth statements about them, and they have a fixed value. But any truth statement that you have about the future necessarily has a will attached. I will do this. This will do that. And so the that that distinction, that point of passage between things that between truth claims about the future and truth claims about the present or past is the shedding of the will. It seems to me that the point at which something goes out of the, I don't want to say potential because I feel like that implies that it could not happen, which isn't correct, but the non-actualized. I think the point at which something goes from the non-actualized to the actualized is when it sheds its will. That's the difference. Has it actually happened, or is it definitively going to happen? Are two very different things.
So like an astronomical event that like humanity has no control over.
Right.
Right. We can predict, for example, that a comet is going to slam into a planet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have no conscious beings that we know of have, besides, I don't know if God counts as a conscious. I don't know what you want to. We can. Anyway, none of humanity, no one I know of, would be able to stop this cosmic event from occurring.
Sure.
Right? But we can make predictions that it will.
Yeah.
So whose will is being lost?
No, not will as in agency. I mean, will the word, the linguistic term. Shedding of the will, meaning like literally, if I want to make a truth claim about whether or not my hand moves, then I have to say my hand will move. But if I want to make a truth claim about what just happened, then I say my hand moved or my hand is moving. I think the moved or is moving are both ontologically exist in a very different sense, in a much more real sense than my hand will move. I think that they're all true and they all have a fixed truth value, but I think the former two exist in an actualized sense and the latter exists in a non-actualized sense, which is ontologically different.
Is it ontological? So you made a shedding of the will argument, but that's mainly a linguistic argument, is it not? I get that you have an instinctual feeling to say that that there's a clear distinction between actualized and non-actualized.
Yeah, I don't think it's a linguistic distinction. I think that, I mean, again, we've had this conversation before, but language is extrapolated from reality. Language is just what we use to think about the things that actually happen. And so I don't think that discounting something as a linguistic concept. I mean, I don't like,
sure,
there's nothing,
there's
such thing as a conceptual, as a purely linguistic concept.
Fair enough. There are things like that are not directly correlated. I don't think it's like, I don't think that seeing that a bunch of cultures have come up with the idea of God, I don't see that as being enough of a reason to say God exists, though. I don't think that's not sufficient, in my opinion. Does that make sense? It's very similar. It's like, okay, well, if the most of the human mind agrees on this linguistic characteristic that happens to help, I don't think that characteristic can then be applied to reality with much certainty at all.
Sure, but I mean,
it might be a good pointer to then do, to look into, but I don't think it's...
Well, and that's a speculative claim, not a descriptive claim, in terms of any language that's used to describe the things around us or the things that are happening in a direct sense, as in this happened or this will happen or that is a tree. All of these things, I think, are reflections of reality that we are then perceiving and conceptualizing. And because language bears its genetic roots in reality, I don't think that there's such a thing as a purely linguistic concept. Now we can come up with things. We can like I don't think that there's a unicorn that exists in reality.
Or a dragon.
Sure. But right, and we can conceptualize these and we can come up with them, but dragon is not a linguistic concept. Dragon is is a non-linguistic concept. Dragon is just a concept.
Sure, yeah. But my point was more to say that like if we make an observation as to like a useful thing to our lives, like being able to say that I am going to do something, I will do something,
right,
is a useful thing to say. I will go do my homework after I eat. I will go do this. I will do this. I will, you can. It's very useful to say that, and I think that's why it cropped up. But I don't think it's. I just don't think it's necessarily a statement about, I suppose nature itself.
I mean, it's objectively either true or false.
Sure. Yeah.
Which means that it occurs in reality, exists in reality.
If the statement is, yeah.
If things have a truth value, then they exist in reality.
I'm just saying that, like, that yes, a claim like that has a truth value, but I don't think that the will is purely for the benefit of people to make that distinction.
But it's not. I mean, because there is clearly a real distinction between something that has happened and something that will happen.
From the point of view of a person, yes.
No, objectively.
Why objectively?
Because one is past and one is future.
But you're the observer of the past and the future, so you're relying on your own, assumption of past and future. Again, it's going back to the cogito where you say the only thing you can trust is yourself. The only thing you can trust is your own existence, right?
The only thing you can prove.
I don't think you can
prove
it. The only thing you could...
No. The only thing you can not question.
Yes, and I would say that you can't say that that's the case. But man, this fly is being... I think it falls back onto that. I think it falls back onto that.
No.
It's all about belief.
Because I'm not localizing time. I don't think that time is in any way dependent on an observer. I think time is the measurement of the movement of matter.
Right, but you're saying like
matter.
Saying something will happen. Like I will raise my arm right now.
Right.
I will raise my arm in 5 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
No.
I didn't want to do it anyway, but
so false.
So it was false.
Right.
My statement was false. But the only reason you were able to make that distinction is because you were able to observe the passage of time.
Well, sure, but the distinction exists independent of you. You can only make it because you can observe the passage of time, but that's just because the perception of that distinction is dependent on perception. What am I saying? Hold on. I think with no observer, suppose a rock rolls down a hill.
With no observer, I will say scientifically, you can't make a conclusion about most things until they are observed.
But if there is no observer there and a rock was on the top of a hill and then rolls to the bottom of a hill, it is either true or false that the rock would roll down the hill. It was true. Before it happened, it was true that rock would roll to the bottom of the hill.
Sure.
Even if no one observed it. The rock still did that.
Sure, yeah.
Right. And so there is so the truth value, the distinction between did and will still exist without an observer because, again, at point A...
Let's say no one ever observed that.
Yeah, doesn't matter. It still happened. The rock still rolled down the hill. I'm sure there are lots of things that happen that no one ever observes.
Many. Yeah.
Right.
But again, I just... Again, I think it's just a linguistic thing. I think the only way that you can ever make a distinction between will and like, or just like any blanket or not blanket, any objective truth statement that has already, like you said, that has already happened in the passage of time. I just don't think that there is any distinction you can make there. I think we are. Yeah, I think it is just a thing that falls on linguistics. I think it is.
How do you?
I think it's intuitive to the human mind to look at it that way. I don't think that saying that's the case or trying to argue from the standpoints you're arguing is enough to say that that is how the universe operates.
So how do you reconcile the fact that things happen that no one observes?
Because I'm not denying that we are observers of a passage of time. I'm just saying that those truth values, I don't think are any different than the ones that have already been observed and happened.
But if something happens that hasn't been observed, that means it was one way and now it's another way. In order for something to have happened, there must have been a change. And that means that so if things happen that would go unobserved, that means, I mean, I guess it doesn't mean this, but you can then also reasonably say that there are things that will happen under a determinist framework that have not been observed.
But I mean, but the problem I'm having with this is that I think that it works exactly. I think it can function exactly in reverse. I think you could say, oh, we exist in the things that will happen. But if we move back in time, we will then exist in the things that had happened. I think that's the exact same. I think that's like a perfect, not contrapositive, like an inverse of that. Like I could perfectly conceive of a universe where the rocks roll uphill.
Sure.
And we exist in this is what will happen, but we're in that right now. And we don't know what had happened, right? And it could perfectly go in reverse and function backwards.
But then more events will have elapsed.
So I think will and had are different. I think I would have to say that it's not. I would deny your assumption that there is. What did you say? The things that had was it actively
actualized and
actualized truths? Yeah, I think. I would think that I would then say that the only truth that is actualized is the instantaneous frame of truth if you freeze time. Everything that is true in this frozen time state is true. But the things that had happened versus have happened, like a particle could jump. You have time 0, 1, and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Particle jumps forward into time 0. So you have time 0, it's at one position. Time 1, it's at another position. And then time 3, it goes back.
Okay.
If you're in time 1, right? That's the only thing you can safely say as an actualized truth is that the things that are.
Well, no, because
the things that had happened have happened.
Right.
And happened versus will happen versus happening.
Right.
I think there's 3 facets there. I don't think there's 2. And I don't think there's any frontier of actualized truth. Because I don't think you can trust the past enough to make that statement.
How so?
Well, because then trust is, I guess it's not an accurate statement, because trust would then, trust feels too personal. But you understand what I'm saying, right?
I do get what you're saying. I'm not sure how you're reasoning it, because again, they're like.
I guess I would look at the past the same way as the future.
Yeah, I mean, that is.
As in, they are not actualized because we're not living in the past nor the future. But you can make conclusions about both from an actualized present. Does that make sense?
Conceptually, it's still.
There might be holes in that.
I don't agree with it, but I think logically it makes sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to me to be an accurate.
It is counterintuitive.
Happen.
It does seem counterintuitive. But I think it's tough because of the way truth like lasts in the human mind, I suppose. That's probably why I feel like there's that intuitive pull to say that things that have happened in the past are definitively actualized truths.
I feel like everything gets logged. You've got like a
Yeah.
Minecraft server running,
Mhm.
and like everything that happens goes down in the log.
Yeah.
And so like, it's not actively happening. That's true.
Mhm.
It's made concrete. It's actualized in a sense that the future
Mhm.
is not.
Yeah.
While you can make definitive claims about whether or not it will happen, it hasn't
Mhm.
yet been written in the ledger.
Yeah.
Yet been logged.
And again, this is more so, I should clarify, this is exactly how I felt not that long ago. I agreed like your whole system of that I would have
Mhm.
entirely agreed with, but I have had to challenge and try and accept other less intuitive truths, or not less intuitive truths, but less intuitive ideas, I suppose.
Okay.
Because of the what I've learned about for example, quantum physics and whatnot. It's so pointed in just accepting time as its own dimension. That I've had to go back and think, okay, no, this is probably like I need to challenge this because I know exactly what you're talking about. I had a phrase I used to say. I used to say time is the frontier of truth.
Yep,
That's what I used to say.
Definitionally growing block theory.
Yeah, that's what I used to say, and I was like, damn, that's quickie, and I love quickie.
Quippy.
Damn, that's quippy, and I like that. So I went. So I went with it because I was like, this makes sense. This makes intuitive sense. I like that. But then I've had to challenge that, and again, I appreciate you pushing me on that because it's
right.
I think it's worth fleshing out. So,
yeah, I feel like another point of distinction between us and another barrier in our being able to communicate on this stuff is that I see time as like, I feel like you would be inclined, I guess I don't feel like, I know that you would be inclined to frame time in regards to perception such that different people can exist at different points in time, like at the same time. You know what I mean?
It
like you've got like the
I know what you mean.
The relativity, like if
yes.
you're like if someone is next to a black hole, time is moving slower for them, and so
if you're driving in a car and I'm standing on the sidewalk and you drive past me, if you look at the exact point, I'm not going to say point in time because it gets a little iffy, but if you measure the time that you're experiencing and the time that I'm experiencing, even if we're perfectly lined up with each other, but you're moving faster, then you'll be at a different time than I am, which is very, very strange. And again, I really need to do research into it, but
right.
Yeah.
And so the way that I look at it is not bound by perception, right? So like hypothetically speaking, you could travel backward or forward in time, and then you would be experiencing that time. It would then be that time. And that's not how I look at it. I look at time
force.
as this big external thing, all of which moves at once unilaterally, and then I think any conscious entity that is experiencing time is experiencing the same time, including dead people, because we don't accept soul sleep in orthodoxy, in true Orthodox, not like Eastern Orthodox. Like Orthodox just means true teaching.
Oh, is that what it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doxy is doctrine, teaching, and ortho is just right.
I always use like orthodox as like almost like the standard or whatever. But I realize that might be incorrect. But
it just, it means right teaching. In the like how Catholic just means universal or united. Like the Catholic Church is just the one united church. The Roman Catholics think they're that.
Gotcha.
So that's what they like, the East Orthodox. So anyway, that's a level, right? But so in orthodoxy, in right teaching, we do not accept soul sleep. They came up with it fairly recently. The Jehovah's Witnesses hold to the idea of soul sleep, which is the idea that when you die, your consciousness stops experiencing. You go into a sort of sleep-like state until the second coming, and then you're sort of woken back up.
Judging by your past correlation with consciousness and experiencing being like directly, like definitionally intertwined.
You're right.
Yeah, I could see why you would not agree with that.
That's a fair point, and that's even another reason. But also, it's just not what the scripture says. We get depictions of people existing and experiencing who have died within the external domain of heaven before heaven comes here in the second coming. But yeah, so anyway, all people, all conscious entities, including dead people, are experiencing time at the same point. If you push your button and make the entire world be as it was in the past, I don't know how exactly that interacts with souls and with conscious beings and whatever, but all of them are then going to be experiencing that new future that you've just instantiated by pressing that button.
Right.
All souls that have been created are then going to be experiencing that time at that point. It's just because it's the future. It's not the past. Going back in time, you know. It's this just giant unstoppable juggernaut that just plows forward, and people experience it as they experience it, but it doesn't have any bearing on what time actually is.
Fair enough.
Or how it passes.
And that kind of makes sense from what we've been able to, like, in terms of time manipulation and what we're able to do. We are able to effectively, well, never mind. I don't know enough about this. I'm going to shut up.
Fair enough.
Well, did you want to go on to how you personally deal with change and how we personally deal with change as like from like a practical perspective? Given that
sure.
We are running a little low on time, which is why.
Yep.
Just as a quick thing, because I personally I kind of accept that both time and change, like practically there's no stopping it. And so I've kind of just been able to accept that change, like I said, I think in one of the other ones, one of my favorite things to say is change is the only constant, which is which is kind of a funny phrase because it's inherently paradoxical, I believe. But yeah, it's like inherently paradoxical, but that's why I like it. But yeah, so I kind of accept that things are changing, and they will continue to change, and all I can do is try and be best adapted to change. And there are times in which you can relish in the unchanging of your own life and whatnot. Like, for example, you could have 5 years of just like pretty much the same old thing. Go to work, come home, there's like solace in that routine of unchangedness. But I also think that even in the minutia, things will change, and that it's perfectly reasonable, and I think probably a good thing to accept change as being, just accept change as it is and try and be as best adapted to it as you can.
So change is the only constant. There's the obvious problem that you point out with it, but also, in order for change to exist, even conceptually, you have to accept some level of continuity of identity. Right? Because if nothing continues, if no identifiable thing continues, nothing that bears an identity, then there is no change. There's only replacement. One thing goes
Yes.
away and there is now a new thing, but that's not a change unless you're observing the space in which it happens.
No,
and
no.
That's changing.
So I should preface that phrase exists in practicality and not
Okay.
objectivity, which makes total sense because then I can place a personal identity on what change is and say that change is always happening. You see, it functions. I mean, it does fit together really well, puzzle piece wise. It
Fair enough. You're internally consistent.
Mhm. Yeah, because then I have my own conception of what change's identity is, and change's identity can change, which is strange, but it might be reliant on itself definitionally, but I don't know if we want to get into
How are you
that.
identifying? I do. How are you identifying change in changing ways? How does the identity of change?
I think the identity of change is very similar to the objective definition that I gave like at the very beginning of this podcast, in relation to characteristics of things. Right? We kind of we have this weird abstract idea of what change is, right? And so we put together a personal identity of what change is, and then we can make conclusions based off of that personal identity. And I think, it's reasonable from that to say that, oh, well, if everybody has like not the same, but a very similar idea of what change is, what change's identity is it not reasonable then to say that, like, well, clearly everybody sees this, so like, doesn't this exist beyond us? But I don't think it does. I think people are more similar to each other than we give ourselves credit for. Both evolutionarily and whatnot. But I think beyond that, I don't think you can make any substantive, objective statement about what change is on the basis of what we experience as change.
Really? You don't feel like you can say that for something to change means that a thing either sheds or adopts properties? A thing is now different from how it was before. There's something that has about it that is not the same.
I don't know if I can or not.
Like, what else would change be?
I'm not sure. Again, I think I'll have to do some independent reading into that personally, because I would need to see if I can even comfortably and concretely place a definition on what change is.
Fair enough.
But I think from a practical perspective, I think we all agree on what roughly what change is. For something to change, or what change as itself exists as, I think we can. Yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable. Yeah. So the going back to the quote that the phrase I like saying, I think that exists entirely in practicality and not objectivity.
Okay.
So how do you feel about change? Because I know
consistent.
How do you feel about change? Because I know from prior talks I've had with you about this, you used, at least from what I remember, you used to look upon change as kind of like uncomfortable, or something to be avoided and stuff like that. So
yeah, broadly speaking, I'm not a fan. This is true. I rate change low star rating.
Oh.
But so that's, and I mean, so I don't hold that exactly anymore. I'm not warm to it. But I think that is because of an experiential bias. I think that the reason that I don't like change is that my understanding of change has been, broadly speaking, perceptual, experiential, and the majority of things that, I mean, like most of the changes that I'm going to experience will have been instilled by people, and people just suck.
Right.
And so it makes sense, if I'm gauging my understanding entirely of change on the works of people around me, that I'm going to be somewhat cool to change. somewhat cool to the concept of change.
Warm to the concept.
No,
of
the
change?
opposite.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because people suck, and so the changes that they're instilling are going to be unpleasant proximally, even if they lead to an ultimate good.
But isn't everything changing the will of God?
Yeah. Well, right. And so this is where we're going, because
so even if it is like your perception of it is that it's being caused by people, but it isn't when you dig deeper.
Because
correct?
something that's caused by God to lead to an ultimate good is caused by God to lead to an ultimate good doesn't mean that it itself is good. Like we used the example some number of episodes ago. This may have been one of the ones we did before we started releasing them. But right, like Lot's daughters like sleep with him, get him drunk, and sexually assault him. Not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Bad action described in the Bible as sin, but also give us the heritage that then leads to Christ. I think. Don't quote me on that. Lead to something good. I think it's that. Right, and so like bad actions can, like sin isn't not sin. It's still sin, and we're still accountable for it, even though God ordains it. The culpability is still fully ours, and it's still fully a bad thing. It just leads to something good. And so something can be proximally bad, even though it's good in the big picture because it's leading to something good. That doesn't strip it of its degeneracy. But I was talking even more just from like an experiential standpoint. Like experientially, lots of things, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so having come further into faith since we've talked about this, and having undergone a lot more positive changes myself and in my own life, and understanding the sanctification conceptually is just positive God instilled change, right? You come to faith, the Spirit chooses you, and then there's justification, which is when you're under the Spirit, when you're declared as one of God's people. Adoption. So then once you're justified, then God takes you in as his son, or daughter. And then sanctification, which is the process then of slowly being made more and more Christ-like by the Spirit, slowly being made better and better over time. The Spirit is working in you to instill change, which makes you more like God, in essence, not in office.
Right. Yeah.
And so I don't get to just not like change anymore. I don't get to just be opposed to it, because all of time is going from creation to the end of time, the second coming. And all of the change that elapses is leading to that, which is a good thing. We have the Great Commission, right? We're called to make Christians of all nations. We're called to instill positive change in the world as part of our calling, and God promises to instill positive change in us as we get closer to him. And so change itself is neither inherently good nor bad. I guess you could sort of make a case that it's good because it points toward the ultimate good at the end time, but that's iffy. I think it's not morally loaded. And then there is good or bad change, which would be getting closer to or farther from God, coming into or out of existence.
Right.
Into or out of order, all of the transcendentals. Right, and so I think that broadly speaking, I don't really like change. I'm not even sure if that's true anymore. I feel like the more I come to faith, the more at peace I am with it. I don't dislike change as much anymore, but it does take inertia, and it is unpleasant.
Yeah.
To go through to some extent. I don't know how I feel about change, man. I'm conflicted.
Fair enough. I was going to say from my experience,
I'm
the more
thawing to it. How about that?
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, fair enough. That because like from my own experience, the more I've learned about these things, like the more because originally I was not super interested in philosophy to begin with,
Mm.
right? But the more I've looked into it, the more at peace I have become with it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and I think that's very similar to what you're saying. It's like
Yeah.
the more I've come into my own personal philosophy that is Christianity, that's the more at peace you've become with the idea of change. So I think that's I don't know, maybe that's generalizable. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
I feel like there must be a counterexample because it seems like you could have a personal philosophy that's directly opposed to change,
probably, yeah.
and then getting closer to it would make you like change less.
It's such a fruitless effort. I don't think that people because if you're trying to directly, what's the most directly anti-change philosophy you could have? Stopping time, I suppose, but that's an impossible task. I think so.
Yeah, I mean,
Stopping the
vying
passage
against
of time, I
change does tend to. Well, I don't know. I do feel like there's something to be said for sort of minimizing change, though. Like we, in our present day,
Mhm.
really go ham on the change thing. We were talking about this a bit in our last couple episodes with the just all the subversion and all the looking for new boundaries and trying to change things and avoiding things because they're old and straying from tradition because it's traditional and all that stuff. And I like certainly we've gone overboard with that. I think probably the majority of at least. Well, I don't know. I guess that's a dicey statement to make, but I don't know. I feel like most things were better before now, like ideologically and architecturally and style wise and just like family wise, all of the things. I feel like we've regressed, or not even regressed. I feel like we've devolved instead of evolved in many regards. I'm not gonna say most.
Yeah. You probably want to say most though.
Yeah, I'm not confident enough in it to say it, but that's where I'm leaning.
Gotcha.
And so while vying against change itself, I think is futile. I do think that having a sort of continuity bias is maybe a good thing. I think that there's an important culling process. It's important to separate the wheat from the chaff and keep the things that are good and fix the things that are bad. But I feel like that process should be done conservatively and with great caution. I think that the flippant disposing of things is one of the more dangerous schemas you can take.
Yeah, I mean, generally I would agree. Of course, I am more, I suppose, willing to defend some of these changes that you're opposed to. But I realize that's actually, I think, I don't know. I feel like it's most people probably don't like the changes that have occurred, at least in American everyday life. But they're willing to accept it, I suppose. Like if you actively asked a random person whether or not they like postmodernism or whatever, they would probably say no. I think you'd get about 60% of people saying no.
I don't think you're right about that. Although I don't know. I mean, I guess I have a saturated. I feel like most of the people who are thinking about postmodernism are going to be in a sort of circle that tends to lean postmodernist.
Really?
I do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of the academic world leans postmodernist. Like broadly speaking.
Okay. You mean like from an institutional level?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. This is very testable. I'm actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is run a study.
We could run a study.
See, if only we had listeners.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, genuinely, we could actually be very fun to run an official study in that regard. Like that actually would be an interesting thing to
right? Like
look into.
I mean, we could just do it like on campus. We
Yeah,
could just
I know.
survey people.
Exactly. I know.
Okay, I'm open to this.
That'd be really fun.
I'm down.
Mm. Anyway, I've gotten everything I wanted to.
Yeah, I think
all the
we've pretty
broad
much
things.
hit
Yeah.
all my bases. Also, I got my
Yeah.
little hybrid theory thing out there.
That's a Linkin Park album. It's fantastic.
Makes me like it less. But yeah, so there can be good change and there can be bad change. So I think surely we've got to have some sort of imperative to do everything in our power to
promote
like
good change.
like there is going to be change.
Mhm.
The change can be good or bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
You'd
think
say
we've
it's
got
our
an
responsibility.
imperative to then to then point things toward good change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. I would agree with that.
Yep.
Cool.
Excellent.
Well, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Yep. Praise God. I'm proud of you. You didn't this time.
I was focusing so hard not to.